Hello YouTube, and welcome back to Brewing with Magic. As you can see, it's another Brew Crew series. Hello Will, and that's because we have some more spoilers for STRIXHAVEN. But before we get into those, I do want to remind you that as soon as we hit 100 subscribers, we are going to give away 3,400 gems for free to one of our random subscribers. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please smash it, like the video, make sure you share it to all your friends, and let's build a community together. STRIXHAVEN is right around the corner, and they have spoiled 2 more cards, and they are both Mythic and Planeswalkers. So wow, Will, right? These some big ones today. So let's go over them individually, and then I'm gonna shift over to some cards that we think that would synergize with them really well, and have Will kind of explain what we're thinking there with those. So first off, we have Professor Onyx, who is really Liliana, but I like how they've named her since it is a school-based or a Magic school-based set, so that's kind of neat. 2 black, 4 colorless, so total converted mana cost of 6. Are we supposed to say converted mana cost still, or what is the new? I gotta get used to term. I gotta get used to that one. Total mana cost or whatever it is. She costs 6 total. Legendary Planeswalker Liliana, and she has a new ability that we have not seen. Believe right, Magic. I was out of Magic for a couple of years there. Will this is new, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Okay, this is a new mechanic.
Okay, so it's Magecraft. Whenever, and I don't know if this is specific to her or if we're going to see more Magecraft cards. We don't know yet. So Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I mean, that's just static right out the gate.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's sounds amazing. It sounds what Black wants to be doing already. So let me just keep reading it. I'm getting excited. Then I'll have you explain some of it. So then we got the +1. You lose 1 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. I want to go on. We'll wait a second. Woof, that's amazing. -3. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. And then -8, each opponent discards a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. And then why don't you go ahead and repeat that 6 more times? I mean, what an amazing ultimate. They're probably going to be dead at that point. If they're not dead, they ain't going to have anything left in their hand. And it comes out with 5 loyalty. So right out the gate, Will, what do you think about this Planeswalker?
I think it's actually going to be really good. The Magecraft alone makes the static ability way worth it, due to the fact if you have any low-cost spells, removal spells, discard spells that you want to play when she's already on the board. So now you're gaining life, they're losing life. So that's an awesome static ability. So first we have is +1. So you lose 1 life. Okay, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. So basically it's a black version of Brainstorm. So the cool part about this, though, is that if you're playing a recursion deck, or if you're looking for a specific card to maybe get yourself out of trouble, you're putting 2 cards in your library, your graveyard, I'm sorry, and then you're able to keep 1 in your hand.
Escape.
And that 1 card, yep, you started doing escape cards, which is also even better. Yeah, I totally agree. But recursion decks are going to be amazing.
I think they're going to be a thing. I think they're going to. Yeah. I think Mono Black and Dark Ugin is about to become a big thing.
And then the -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. So you have a little bit of protection right off the bat. So hopefully getting rid of the biggest threat that could affect this Planeswalker.
Or so a better way to, the way I see that is if your opponent only has 1 creature in play, no they don't, and you still have a Planeswalker.
Yep. Yeah, that too. So, I mean, there's a lot of good uses for the +1 and the -3. So it kind of fits that dynamic we see in most Planeswalkers. Do you get a benefit and do you get protection of some sort? And then finally, the -8. Each opponent may discard a card, and if they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. So imagine if you're playing a discard deck in general, and you're removing their cards anyways, and you're able to pop this off. I mean, that's -18 life right off the bat. So it's you're pretty much just dead regardless.
And if there's a mono blue deck or a control deck that has tons of cards in their hand, they're either going to be dead, which they're not going to allow that to, or they're going to have no cards left in their hand. So you still pretty much won. So, well, I think we have some ideas in mind here. So why don't we go ahead and switch over to that real quick and talk about some cards we think Professor Onyx would fit really well with.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so here is the Professor Onyx cards that we thought would be really neat right out the gate. So I'll go over the 3 cards real quick, and then you can kind of tell them why we think that these are going to be good. So the first row we have here is high-end. I mean, there are other ways to do recursion, but, you know, which we'll get to in a second. But these are high-end recursion cards that also maybe haven't seen a whole lot of play. Blood on the Snow is a really good one, but it hasn't seen tons of play, but enough. but Haunting Voyage definitely hasn't seen any play. You maybe haven't even heard of this 2 black, 4 colorless sorcery. Choose a creature type, return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. And then the other one that you might not have seen, even though it's been around for a little while, 2 black, 10 colorless, the Cauldron of Eternity. This is where we brew our magic. No, it's a legendary artifact. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. With Liliana's ability, that's great. Whenever a creature you control dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. Pay 2 and 1 black. Tap it. Pay 2 life. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this only time you could cast a sorcery. So some newer cards you might not have seen there. What kind of shell are we thinking, or why do we like these cards?
So I honestly think, especially since Professor Onyx is a high-end mana cost, you already know that you're trying to get this mid-range, late-game action going. So what we're really trying to do is maybe drop smaller creatures at the forefront, things that affect the board, so we can worry about recursion later and get hopefully max value early game. So the Cauldron of Eternity, why I like that card, why we discussed that one specifically, is just that if you have a lot of like light end creatures at the beginning, you're doing enough to keep them, mucking up the board. Maybe you're using Death Touch or things along those lines to cross things off the marker. Then eventually you can either drop this for 2, and if it is on the battlefield, the cool part about it synergizes really well with the Professor of Onyx, because her +1 is, again, losing 1 life, look at the top 3, keep the cards you want, and then put those 2 cards in the graveyard. So maybe you're trying to get creatures into the graveyard, and maybe the card you're going to keep is going to be Blood in the Snow, or maybe it's
or the Cauldron itself. Like I absolutely 100% believe you're getting rid of those creatures if you build the deck right, and you're keeping your protection or your removal and stuff like that. So
yeah, and then if you go to Haunting Voyage, that card works really well with the Professor of Onyx as well, because of the same reason. You're starting to put a lot of recursion into the graveyard, you're trying to make something of it, and then eventually you're like, hey, I'm going to bring these 2 cards back immediately. You can foretell this early, so it's an early card foretell that just sits there, and eventually you're returning all the creatures of that creature type. Now, imagine if you were to make use
zombie
tribal, or use the artifact that turns all creatures into all creature types. Then same thing. So you're able to pull everything back out from the graveyard. So there's a lot of manipulation you can do.
I believe you mean Maskwood Nexus.
Yeah, the Maskwood Nexus. Thank you. Yeah, just that alone. And then, of course, Blood in the Snow. So with Blood in the Snow, destroy all creatures, and then you're able to bring something back. Or maybe you want to bring back Professor of Onyx because maybe you had to ditch her out, and you're able to destroy everything on the board and then bring Professor out. Now you have a Planeswalker. They have no board, and you're good to go. So there's a lot of different ways you can manipulate these 3 cards specifically. I know they're in the high end, but for a mid-range deck or things that you're going to be able to do, you're probably getting more value out of it.
Now, you mentioned trying to get some low-end creatures out there. So, I mean, why not have your low-end creatures also have a theme to the deck? I'm sure everybody's seen these cards. We've got Null Priest of Oblivion, Obsessive Stitcher, and Acolyte of Affliction. So these are doing the same thing, right? But they're kind of your early game low drops that you could not only use to bring things back out and play, but then if you bring them back, you do it again and again.
Yeah. We really thought it'd be fun to show you a little bit of a highlight of different colors. So if you want to go the mono black version, you're doing the Null Priest, and if this case, again, if you're using the kicker, you're able to bring up something back from the graveyard anyways and recur that. So it's a twofer when you're using this card. We decided to say, hey, if we're going to go Dimir and you splash the Stitcher, the Obsessive Stitcher into the deck, that one again is the same thing. You're milling out, but you're also able to recur. So that card is amazing in itself. And then finally, you're able to look at the Acolyte of Affliction, and the same thing.
Any permanent on this one. That's the nice thing about permanent. This one.
Yeah, and it fits the Golgari theme. So the Professor of Onyx with these cards, you can fit it into different multicolored decks and still have it be effective to fit your theme strategy.
Cool. Okay, and then we have we kind of thought it would be really neat to do maybe a Liliana tribal deck. and they all
Yep.
kind of synergize pretty neat together anyway. So we probably don't need to get into it too much here because of the fact that, I mean, what are you going to explain? Lily does what Lily does. But,
Yep.
you know, we've got Liliana Waker of the Dead, Liliana Death's Mage, and of course the Professor Onyx. And they all just really synergize together if you can keep them all out there. It might be a little bit more of a win more, but it sure sounds fun.
Yeah, and especially if you're doing, high end and you have a lot of destruction spells, you're removing a lot of creatures from the battlefield. If you're able to keep Liliana Walker of the Dead on the board and -7, I mean, you're just going to win the game.
I mean, you have Liliana Walker the Dead, +1 is helping your opponent have less cards for the ultimate of Professor Onyx. You got Liliana Death Mage's +1, returning creatures that you're getting rid of with the Professor Onyx's +1 to bring them back to your hand. And you have it's kind of toolboxy, so kind of funny.
Yeah.
So and then last we just put Croxa here because you can just literally mill Croxa to the graveyard with her ability, get the card you really want, and then also escape it later. Like
yeah, exactly. So, and that's the cool part about it. You can start dropping stuff in your graveyard, getting things in there, get Crocs on the board. If you're able to have more of that mid-range game, Professor Onyx, say you Blood in the Snow, wipe everything out, and you're able to put Professor right onto the battlefield. I mean, there's just a lot of different things you can do in different color schemes. And just alone, we saw Dimir, we saw Gruul, and now we're seeing Rakdos. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do with the Professor, I think.
Cool. Well, let's get back over to the preview page and let's look at the second card that we got to see today.
All right, perfect.
And next we have Kasmina, Enigma Sage. I dare you to say that 3 times fast. She's 1 blue, 1 green, and 1 colorless, so Simic, and legendary Planeswalker, Kasmina. So what do we have? We have another static ability here. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this one. Interesting. Each other Planeswalker you control has the loyalty abilities of Kasmina, Enigma Sage. So that's already interesting. So comes out with 2 loyalty, +2, scry 1. I like that. -X, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. And then, of course, you probably guessed it already, put X +1/+1 counters on it. And then -8, search your library for an instant or sorcery card that shares a color type with this Planeswalker. Exile that card. Then shuffle your library. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Now, I'm not going to lie, Will, as I was reading that, we were sitting there looking at really fun blue and green cards, which we're going to show the people here in just a second. But I missed a whole part of that earlier that neither one of us really talked about. Share the colors of this Planeswalker.
Yeah.
But that's any Planeswalker because they'll all have that ability.
Yes.
I didn't even think about that. So if Liliana, since we're talking about Professor Onyx, is on the board, and I would much rather use her -8. I'm just saying, if you needed to -8 her because you have Kasmina on the board and you used Kasamina's, you get to go find a black instant or sorcery to do whatever you need to do. So interesting. So tell me a little bit about this card and what excites you or doesn't excite you.
Yeah, well, the part that I did like and I thought was kind of interesting is the loyalty abilities. So if you're playing a Super Friends deck, you now have a lot of transferable abilities for Kasima to go with other Planeswalkers. Now, usually we're using those other Planeswalkers for something very specific, but if you're just trying to advance the board, see what you need to see, scrying 1 to get a +2, and that +2 is probably what makes it that much better.
Oh, yeah,
There's
right?
a lot of Planeswalkers that only have a +1 ability.
I didn't think of that.
So if you're able to have Kasima on the battlefield with a Planeswalker that you want to get there faster, then you do the +2, you scry, that's fine.
Teferi.
But you're able to get there so much quicker. Yeah, it is.
Isn't Teferi really cool. +1 on each turn? So it'd be +2 on each turn before you get 3 turns in a row. Yours plus.
Yeah. So it's going to be really good. And that's why I really dig this, is because if you're playing with the Keeper of Time and Kastima, it's going to be really fun. You can get those double turns, those 2 turns in a row way faster.
And I think you go infinite at that point, right? Because by the time they get another turn, you'll have gotten so many. I think you go infinite. If you can pop those 2 cards off, your opponent never gets a turn again. I'm pretty sure the math is correct. If I got to look at it, but.
Yeah, it'll be pretty close. Yeah, if not directly on the money. And then the -X, I mean, don't be wrong. Like, a lot of people might think, hey, that's not effective, but you have to really think about it. You're creating a protector for yourself. But other Planeswalkers will also have this ability depends what kind of deck you're building. And my whole opinion about this one is if I'm playing this with a Vornaclex, you're getting max value. So there's a lot of really cool effects you can get out of this as well. The -8 though, that one I thought was really cool. I mean, just her alone. Let's say without any other planeswalkers, just with her alone, being able to fetch any blue or green spell that's an instant or sorcery, that's game ending. Maybe you're getting double turns. Maybe you're playing an ultimatum. I mean, there's so many really good spells that are in green and blue. So this card, even though it's a low CMC and you're starting at 2, right off the bat you're getting the +2, so you're protecting itself with a 4. Hopefully you're maybe even ramping into it, so now you have maybe a card that might be protecting this planeswalker. So I don't know. I think there's a really lot of cool manipulated abilities that Consema is going to be able to give you that we're probably not be able to see as of yet, but you have a lot of good ideas for.
Okay, well, why don't we show them a couple of the ideas that we had, and we'll stick with just kind of the color package of Kasmina, because we could be here all day if we included every color of every planeswalker. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Okay.
So these are the cards that we thought would be interesting to highlight with Kasmina. First off, we have our Gilded Goose over here. Why do we like this Gilded Goose, Will?
Well, the reason being is just it's a quick ramp card, so you can actually drop Kasima on turn 2, which is really good. So turn 1, drop a forest, Gilded Goose. Turn 2, forest or island or whatever other color.
Any other color
at that moment. And then all of a sudden you're dropping Kasima. And if they haven't played anything yet, it's even better. But if they did, usually it's a low, attack value. So if that's the case, you're at 4. You take the hit, you're fine. Now you have a Gilded Goose, to defend, as well as maybe dropping a 3rd land since you just scryed, and you're able to get that 3rd land you need. And now you're able to play a creature to defend. So Perfect. It kind of works out really well.
And then, as we kind of hinted at earlier, Teferi, Master of Time.
Yeah. So this card I thought would be great for this deck, with her specifically, because if you drop her on, we'll say turn 3 or turn 2, and maybe if you're able to either ramp or get something else in play to get you to a turn 4 Teferi, even better, because then if you get him on turn 3, it's disgusting, because now he has the +2 effect, so he can scry if you want to go that route, but it's just getting him to his -10 that much faster is insane on top of it. So it just depends if you're looking to draw a card or discard. I mean, it's really flexible on both ends, but having both of them in play and trying to go with a Simic package on this end really works well.
Yeah, and I think you only go infinite, if my math's right, maybe with Vorinclex on the board. So yeah. I think if you ultimated Teferi with 1 loyalty left, and then you have 2 more turns after that, it's only going to be up to 5. Because your opponent, I was thinking, yeah. So, anyways, and then we have Ashiok and Nightmare's Muse.
Yeah. So I thought again, if you're trying to go in more of a Sultai package, I think this would be going really well as the same. Because again, if you're able to get Kasima out and have her on the board, and then get Ashiok out, maybe turn 4, maybe turn 5, depending on how it goes. But then you can plus Ashiok. If you want the 2/3, great. If you want to scry and get to that -7 within 1 turn, that means the following turn you can minus Ashiok and get that ability, depending on what's already in the graveyard, what you've already done. So it can actually be really proactive to use Ashiok in that package, especially in Sultai. So you're able to do a lot more as well.
Okay, and then Nico Eris. Why do you like Nico?
So Nico Eris, I thought this was kind of cool. So if you wanted to make a Bant control deck and really, we'll just say tick off other players, because control in itself is always fun, but Bant control with Simonina in the deck, it really shows the value, because you're able to move up really quickly with her on the battlefield, scry to the colors you need. And then with Bant, the cool part about it is you can ramp to it really quickly. You have enough of removal spells in white really help take and control of the board. And then with blue, you're now being able to counter spells, take extra turns. And then with Nico Eris specifically, you're able to make shards, draw counters. But in this case, it's kind of neat, because instead of using Nico's ability in the +1, and say you don't have a creature, or maybe it's a 1/1 bird, and you don't want to attack and lose it, So instead, you +2 scry, so you're getting the extra value out of it, and then you can still minus for the shard. So you're actually getting more value out of the Nico with Casamanina on the board.
Okay, and next we have our section that we call What Would We Like to Go Get with Kasmina? So we have the Auron's Epiphany, a Seagate Restoration, and of course all the ultimatums except for the one that wasn't invited to the party because it doesn't have Kasmina's colors, but you know, you can change that if you use that on another planeswalker. We're not getting into that, but Auron's Epiphany, of course, I see why you would like it, but what would you like to say?
yeah, but that's 100%. You know, to take extra turns is amazing. So why not manipulate the deck as much as you can to take those extra turns? I mean, foretell it, whatever. But I mean, heck, if you're running a ban control deck, you're running 4 of these in there, and now you're on fire. So it's that much better. Plus, on top of that, you're getting extra value if you're playing ban control and you're using other planeswalkers like the Teferi, and you have a Vornaclex in the deck. I mean, it's just gross. And then the next one was Seagate Restoration. Maybe you need to draw more cards. Maybe you're not getting what you need, and you just have to get some more value out of it. Maybe you have that extra use you're able to do. Plus, on top of that, it's a land. You can play it anyways. So it's just another card you can just get.
Or you're in a mirror match, and your opponent has a full grip, and you have a full grip, and then you get a full gripper. So
that's right.
And then and then we have the 4 ultimatums, which I mean everybody knows what the ultimatums do. So I mean, just as a whole, why would you want to grab an ultimatum? I don't get it.
So in this case, the best part is just that, and again, just using her colors, right? Green and blue. So if you're just using green and blue, you're basically able to retrieve 4 of the 5 ultimatums, which is already amazing in itself. I would personally say that if you want to use her as an addition to try to grab these and get a free value out of it, great, and it might fit into those packages of whatever decks you're trying to build. But I still think, just again, you know, for the most part, the emergence, the ultimatum, the Sultai colored one, that is probably going to see a lot more high-end play, especially using her as a value source, because not only can you get a Vornaclex out, you can get extra turns out, but then you can get whatever the heck you else want out and see what they grab. But if they give you the Vornaclex and if they give you the extra turn and you have her out and you're grabbing anything else, I mean, I just feel like you're going to get so much more value because you have the highest potential of almost doing it again. So it's pretty cool.
And if you drop her on turn 6 and then turn 7 you go into an emergent ultimatum, your opponent's probably been working a whole lot on trying to get rid of the Liliana.
Yep.
And now they have to deal with whatever you got from the ultimatum. So it's amazing. Yeah. So lots of potential with just these 2 new cards to make the meta change a little bit. All kinds of new stuff can happen. How exciting. All these new cards. We're going to be previewing them as they come out. If there's even one a day, we're going to talk about it in some regard and get it out to you because we're having a blast and we want you to have a blast with us and see these cards and go down the adventure with us. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And when we hit 100 subscribers, which we're coming up on really fast, we are going to be giving away 3,400 gems for free to one of our subscribers at random. If you haven't liked the video yet, like it. It's that fast. We're already done. We did it. And as always, until next time, have a blast in the arena.